And so, welcome to the CSIRO and CRE Next Gen Artificial Intelligence and Emerging Technology Program information session. It's a mouthful, but I think we'll make it all make sense by the end of it. So, today, my name is Reece Rigo. I'm the Deputy Director of CRE at RMIT, and I'd like to introduce you to Jessica Cornock, who's the manager of the Next Gen Graduates Program at CSIRO. And I'm going to hand over to Jess to do a little bit of a welcome to country.
So thanks everyone for joining us. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Turrbal peoples as the traditional owners of the land that I'm presenting from today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I recognise their continuing connection and custodianship of the land, seas and waters of this beautiful country that I call home.
So today we're just going to talk a little bit about the Next Gen program. We're going to give a bit of a background around it. Jess is going to share some of the areas of interest, some of the societal benefits, the student benefits, and of course the industry benefits. And also we're going to learn a little bit about what has been funded so far. And then I'll spend a bit of time talking about CRE, a bit of the key areas of our work and next steps, as well as we're going to be taking questions. So hold fire on your questions. We're going to have an opportunity at the end, or if you want to type them in the chat, but we're definitely taking questions. And we're really looking forward to hearing your questions as well. So Jess, over to you. Your first slide.
Thank you very much. And I would just like to reiterate that we generally don't spend a lot of time on slides. So we do like to spend a fair bit of time answering the questions that you have about the program rather than just speaking at you. So on that note, just to reiterate that CSIRO's purpose is to solve the greatest challenges through innovation, science and technology. We're Australia's innovation catalyst, collaborating to boost Australia's innovation performance. And obviously, given that that's our purpose and our vision, we have got this next generation graduates program. Next slide. The Next Generation Graduates Program was developed as part of the Australian Government's Digital Economy Strategy and the Artificial Intelligence Action Plan. And the aim of it is to upskill Australia's workforce in AI and other digital and emerging technologies, such as robotics, cybersecurity, quantum computing, blockchain, and other sciences through competitive scholarships. The reason that this happened is because there was a study done by Deloitte and CSIRO that showed that we were going to be short about 160,000 digital and AI workers by about 2030. And, you know, we need to start trying to build pipelines to bridge that gap. So the way the program has been developed is to be industry-led, to build the skill sets needed for the students to go into industry jobs and build job preparedness. It's a very different experience for the students and potentially for the partners as well, where the students will come in as a cohort. They come in as a group of at least 10, and they work on individual projects that feed into a broader scope of work that where the sum of the projects is greater than the whole. I think I said that the wrong way, but CSIRO will also be doing peer-to-peer learning. We're building a coursework component of it that will allow the students to work together, build their own networks and things like that. So if we go to the next slide, across both of the programs, we're funding at least 480 competitive scholarships for domestic and permanent resident students only. They are being aimed at honours level all the way through to PhD. And we do have an offering of scholarships for 1 year coursework master's students that will allow the universities to build pipelines into PhDs. As I'm sure that most of you are aware, there's a shortage of domestic and PR PhD students in Australia. So by allowing to bring in both honours and coursework master's students into these 1 year programs, we're hoping to build the pipeline into the PhD programs or the MPhil programs. We also think that it's a great opportunity for the industry partners to get involved without having to commit to a 3.5 year project. You can commit to a 1 year project, get a feel for it, see how it works for your organisation, get some quick wins, and then maybe move into a PhD program afterwards. So next slide, please. So in the summary of the programs is that they're actually two separate programs, but we do run them essentially as one holistic program. But each of them has $28.3 million worth of student stipends, which includes stipends and allowances. On top of that, each program is expected to bring in about $9.8 million worth of partner funding to co-fund those stipends and allowances. We're running it as this cohort-based application process. So at any time, we expect universities and their partners to bid in for a minimum of 10 students. And there's $1.2 million of our funding available for each of those applications. So usually the ratio is about 35% of industry funding to 65% CSIRO funding. We ask that the applications align with the Australian government's digital economy strategy priorities, which you can find on the government website, and we do have directions to them from our CSIRO website. And we also would like for consideration to be put into how the cohorts are going to work together and how you're building this job preparedness through these research projects, not just getting students to do a research project with an output, but how we building in this mindset of them being ready for a career in industry later on. We have a whole heap of offerings as part of this to help try and build that network within Australia, including we've got networking opportunities. We would ask partners to take part in those, take part in events, career development days, mentoring. We have coursework that we are running, which happens twice a year. The first one will be running in September this year, and then sort of every 6 months, so summer, winter. We're running a bit late this year because of timelines, but the coursework is going to be project-based with collaborative peer-to-peer learning, and it's a framework that's put in place to try and get the students to think differently about how they would usually do research. So there is some foundational skills expected to be learned in that coursework, which include things like some data science skills and some coding skills, but we are aiming at students who come from every background. So there isn't the expectation that every student coming through these programs will have, an engineering or an ICT background. We would really like to see a really multidisciplinary set of students coming through to leverage each other's skills, with the engineering students propping up some of the others. But then some of the things we're looking at are, of course, ethical AI and things like that. And you've got students from law and arts and areas like that that may be able to contribute more to those sorts of discussions. So this coursework is supposed to build the foundations of how they can think going forward. So if you go to the next slide, please. You're muted, Rita, if you're talking. So this slide here is just a really high-level overview of the sort of what the buy-in looks like. So every student that comes in has to also do an industry placement. So our partners have to be considering how they would want to have the students working in their organisation. The placement has to be part of their research project. It can't be they pause their research and then they move in and do some work for the partner that's completely unrelated. The placements need to be contributing to their outcomes as a student. It doesn't have to happen all at once. The plan for the partner placements is to be decided based on what's best for the student, the supervisors from both the universities and the industries. Then you can see the students get a very competitive stipend of $40,500 a year, which is indexed I think at 1.3% per annum, which is given by the CSIRO contribution. We have also got this RTP qualified masters top up, which is only available at some universities where they have a 1-year masters program that qualifies for an RTP. I know Macquarie has it. It's sort of been put in as an extra because there's only a couple of universities that have built that program, so may or may not be relevant for this purposes. And then obviously honours and the 1-year coursework masters will get a very competitive $10,000 a year because honours and coursework masters usually don't get anything. So we are hoping that by offering this, we can get the students engaged and get them involved early, and then be the first choice for when they move into further research opportunities, rather than being competing for all the same students. So that's, and you can see the partner contribution, which is in total over the entire life of the program, and how much will be funded from the CSIRO contribution down the bottom. And these are all available on our website, so it's all easy to find. And the
Exciting
final slide.
opportunity
It is.
for students, because it means
it's an amazing opportunity.
Yeah. Is that a student speaking?
No, it's a former student who misses his student life very much, and I wish I had a stipend that was that generous, Jess. That's great.
Well, it means you probably don't have to do as many shifts somewhere, or you can actually focus more on your PhD or your masters, etc.
Exactly.
We were also really mindful that in Australia, it's actually, once you've finished undergrad, you can get into a pretty competitive field quite easily. There's not, when you think about the cost of living in Australia and what's available in terms of entry-level positions, we have to be competitive, because if you offer an RTP rate, there's just not a lot of students available in domestic and PR market especially. So we have to be competitive, otherwise we just won't get the students through.
Yeah, and I mean it is a lot smaller than your average wage, but it's enough to survive and to still be able to go to uni, I suppose.
And it's tax-free, and they can still do tutoring and things on the side, so they can earn extra money up to a certain amount, whatever the tax allowance is. So yes, it was, the whole intention behind it was to make it very competitive against the other opportunities that are available for domestic and PR students, simply because there's not a lot of them. And also we would like to be able to offer the opportunity for more mature age students or people who are considering going back, who couldn't potentially afford to do it on an RTP stipend. And on that note, there is some additional funding from CSIRO's bucket to help regional and remote students if needed. So we would really encourage, with the student recruitment side of things, encourage remote students and encourage students who could potentially enroll as a remote student, and provide, CSIRO can provide some additional funding for them to travel for occasionally, given that we've all sort of worked the last 2 years without really ever being in the office very much. Giving those opportunities, I think, will also increase the uptake, and you'll get a more diverse range of students too, instead of just the traditional pathways of students. So, and on that note, CSIRO has no plans to be part of we don't have any oversight of the enrolment. The students are decided on based on the supervisors' decisions and things like that. However, we will be helping with the recruitment strategies and things like that, promotional opportunities, and doing all of those to make sure we get as broad a reach as possible.
That's wonderful. And I know Andy does a lot of student supervision, and you're a big fan of the masters as well, the masters program, Andy. It's a good way to kind of get students in faster and providing more value around that. What did you want to add anything about the masters program?
Me? Oh, actually, I have a question rather than add on.
Go on.
Go for it.
Thanks. So when we say RTP master for 1 year, and what's the difference between this and the Master of Philosophy for the?
So at Macquarie, for example, they have a MRes program, which is the first year is coursework masters and the second year is a research program. So it's an AQF level 8, I think, or 9, but it's only a 1 year master's program, but it qualifies for an RTP somehow. I don't know how they've done it. All I know is that it has an RTP qualification for a 1 year master's by research program, but it's not an MPhil.
Okay, yeah. So we do have a master's, but usually like the 2 years. But so would that say we can split like into 2 1 year, or it's so we go for the
with
master.
the 2 year So with the 2-year master's programs, usually they're like the coursework masters, it's usually a 1 year is full coursework. And then what we would expect for the second year, when they have the opportunity to do a course load that is research
Yes, we do have
heavy,
that. Yeah.
That's when that honours and coursework masters would come in. And so they could get, as long as they can enroll, I've got details on the website and we can provide you with more information about this. But the sorry, I just saw the chat come up and I got distracted.
Yeah, that's a question. Yeah, the question we can address later.
Yeah, so we've got things around that we've put in place, but essentially, as long as they're enrolled in a certain weighting of research where they can do a year, commit to a year, which is a year similar to an honours year, which I know is never an actual year, then they can apply and get the scholarship for the second year only for the research component. So you can get them through the first year of coursework, find the ones that you really want to recruit, target them, get them into your research component because they're doing research component as part of their degree anyway.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
But by offering a stipend, you get the best students.
Yes. And Jess, Dave's put up a question, which I think is a combination of an RMIT and CSIRO answer. But the question is, can you clarify with a 10-person cohort? Does that mean you're asking the partner to contribute 10 people, or are they contributing 1 person?
So it's either or. The application that needs to come in needs to have a minimum of 10 students. That doesn't need to be one industry partner. You can have multiple industry partners contributing to one theme, if you can, and that would be up to sort of RMIT and other universities involved to sort of get together and think about how they want to frame their application. And generally speaking, we ask for this sort of broad scope of work that pulls the cohort together, where the students will obviously work on individual research projects, and we would expect them to share commercial knowledge between 2 different industry partners. But if they're working on a broad theme, they can still bounce ideas off each other where they get the cohort feel and they can work together to do the background stuff, and they're not alone in isolation with a partner.
So does that mean that, for example, Rita at RMIT plus us plus 2 or 3 other Melbourne-based companies might form an application, bring together a single 10-person cohort? Some might similar project. Some might do a placement at our company. Some might be down the road. Is that about right?
Yep, that's exactly right. So with round 1, we had we ended up with funding 12 successful applications, and that was a big mix. We had some where we had 10 industry partners in one application. We had some where we had 1 or 2, and it was just however they pulled their cohort together and however they wanted to work their funding model and things like that. You don't have to do all the same type of student. The minimum of 10 students can be across all of them, so you can build your own pipelines. You can say, well, I'm going to take 2 or 3 honours and then 2 PhD, and then you hope that maybe one of the honours will move into the PhD and things like that. So you can build your own feel of that. The other thing I would say is that other than whatever we commit in terms of our financials to you, to whatever your application is, if you're successful, we don't mind how that moves once you start recruiting students and reassess what you're doing. So if the financials commitment that we make is the same, but you go, oh, we're having trouble recruiting PhD students, let's rethink this and go for 6 masters instead or 6 honours instead, we have no problems with that changing.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
That's okay.
And Dave, when we talk, you'll probably see some of the themes and the groupings that we have around it. And so I think you'll like some of the ones we started to put together. And I think it's really interesting what Jess is saying is that, they don't have to share, but it's a really great way of them being able to be part of a team.
Yeah, so we would build the feel of the cohort a little bit more on our side, but then you don't obviously have to have the 10 students, and we would expect the students to keep the confidentiality of the industry side of things, because that's part of what has to happen when you have a relationship with an industry partner. But the students can still have other people that they can bounce off without feeling isolated.
Yeah, understand. Cool, yeah. Thank you.
No problem. so I guess that's sort of to the next one. Is we did fund 12 successful applications, of which there was 10.4 million committed. So this is across both next gen emerging tech and AI. We had 5.8 million committed from partners, and there was 165 students put forward. So we're in the process of, working through the agreements for those and kicking those off. And hopefully some of those students will start in the September coursework. And we've also opened round 2. It's a bit of a soft opening. We'll be doing a lot more promotion within the next week. The plan for now is that we're closing applications on the 1st of August. And as we've said, we're allowing up to 1.2 million of CSIRO funding per application. And that's kind of it from me. There's a heap more information on our website, which is on the next slide. And I can obviously provide a lot more information going forward, but I'll hand over to Rita now, and then we can talk more at the end.
So I wanted to share just a little bit about CIAIRI, the Centre of Industrial AI Research and Innovation. So we have a lot of industry associations. So we're doing a lot of work around food, agriculture, energy, fintech, and emergency services. We also do work around research collaboration, setting up these joint projects to solve industry problems, joint funding of applications like the one we're kind of looking at the moment with NextGen, workforce transformation. So you'll notice I do a lot of boot camps, and we have a whole lot of different activities around helping the workforce to transform and get training in AI. And we do a lot of community engagement. So, this year we had a CIAIRI AI Open Day where you could come and learn about AI and meet some of our professors and students and some of our industry partners. So you'll see us build this community and really start to kind of beef up and provide acceleration to the industry around AI. And what's also really important about CIAIRI is that we're across the whole of RMIT, so not just in STEM. So we work closely with our colleagues in business and in law and in design and in the health hub and the blockchain area. So it's a great entry to start to think about, how you can bring AI into your organization. And speaking of that, we actually have a range of capabilities. We do a lot of work in autonomous decision systems, optimization and planning. So that's a really important area of work that we're doing at the moment. In emergency management, lots of robotics and human collaboration. So you'll notice that, we work with companies like SoftBank with their humanoid robots, etc., as well as other types of robots. Big area is computer vision. So I think that's one of Andy's special interests. And so we do a lot of work around GANs and different types of computer vision solutions. Machine learning is also a really big area that we get involved in. And looking at different ways and different techniques to use machine learning. Personally, I'm obsessed by the augmented reality and mixed reality work that we do, and that's got some really exciting areas, particularly in the health sector, and the kind of things that you can bring. And when you bring mixed reality into the game, lots of work with data science and business models. Obviously, natural language processing is a really big part of that, with regards to understanding words and being able to understand search, etc. And then ethics is a really big evolving part of what we're getting involved in. So you'll see a lot of activity in that space. So, next step is, get in touch if you want to talk about us. We're also open for questions. So any questions that anyone has, you're happy to come off mute and you'll have Jess to answer your questions. We think it's a super exciting program because it really allows people to, enter AI and start to enable their business with these kind of advanced programs. No one's got a question. What about you, Will? Oh, we've got one. Go, PJ.
Happy to jump in. Thanks, Rita, and thanks, Jess. I guess so. Just looking at the application deadline on the 1st of August, what would you need from an industry partner? Is it sort of an in principle? Is it just sort of a letter of in principle agreement? Is that sort of what we're looking at?
Yeah, it's a non-binding letter of support.
Yep.
So there's
Cool.
a template which is sort of a non-binding, this is what we would expect to be contributing, and this is how we plan on taking part.
Yep. Great.
So yep, sorry, keep going.
I can see Rita was just knocking it down. Could I get in touch afterwards and get a view of the template? And
I
patch that up, and yeah.
100%.
Yeah. The other thing I will say is within the next sort of 2 weeks, we will have a draft, sort of a template of what the agreement would look like at the end if you were successful in funding, so that if that would help as well. We're just finalising the first round to sort of get it to the point where we can make it more broadly available. So that'll obviously help. But the plan is that CSIRO is going to be very hands-off with this. The agreement is very much around the funding model, and we have a lot of reporting requirements because this is funded through the Commonwealth Government. So we have to
the Commonwealth Government, yes.
Yes. So we obviously have reporting requirements that are trickled through into that program agreement, but otherwise it's very hands-off. There's no expectations of CSIRO owning any intellectual property. There's a lot of provisions around ensuring that the students are, looked after and things like that. But otherwise, everything else we would expect that the partners work together to figure out based on a project agreement that sits under it that we don't touch.
Rita, a question from me. Do you have research themes in mind that you're looking to pursue? I'm thinking about if in your industrial area particularly.
I see we have John on the call, Professor John. Did you want to answer that question?
Hi guys, sorry, I just dropped in. I had another meeting. I just came in. I'm not sure the context of this. Sorry, was it Dave?
Dave, yeah.
Hi Dave, I'm John Thangaraja. I'm the research director for the Center for Industrial AI. What did you mean? Particular themes? And we don't have a particular. I mean, we have different partners coming on board, Dave. So look, at the end of the day, basically themes will emerge with the partners that comes in, right? So we don't have a particular theme per se.
Okay.
Varying on the partners that come in and the interest that the partners have, the themes will emerge, and some, and then we will put the bit together based on a cohesive theme. So that's our approach at the moment.
Okay, so there's not sort of a predefined. We're looking to computer vision in healthcare. Who's interested? It's more of a we come with our ideas and see if that sort of aligns.
Yeah, so Dave, the best approach is if you're interested in this scheme, then reach out to us, and I can have a chat with you on what are the research angles that you're interested in and what works best for you, and then we can also see who are the other partners that we have on board. As you can also imagine. Sorry, Dave.
Sorry, you started echoing.
Oh, right. Okay. So sorry. And yeah, so basically we'll have this is a general information session, right? So I think if you're interested, we'll take a deep dive into your research challenges and then see what's the appropriate research questions and how that fits into one of the existing consortium themes, and then we put that forward.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, and I'll just sort of jump in there to say that from our side, from the CSIRO side, when we're assessing, we do expect that the industry co-designs a lot of these things. Like, this is supposed to be industry-led, so that is great to hear that you don't go to industry with a predefined, this is what we want to do. You can see it in the applications when they come through, if an industry partner has been thrown on as a sort of an afterthought.
Yeah.
We do like to see that there's a value add for both sides. So yeah, it's great to hear that you do it as a co-design process. I think it's really important.
Thanks.
Dave, can't wait to see what you've got to tell us.
Oh, I'm going to keep going.
No, it's going to be very interesting, and I think the co-design is really important. So we have still got another few minutes. If anybody else on the call's got a question, we'd love to take your question. Francis, did you have a question you want to ask? I'm seeing you flashing. Maybe not.
No, sorry, no.
Okay. All right. Anybody else with regards to any further information you're after? Jess, maybe if just to stimulate a conversation, did you want to share some details about some of the projects that have previously been funded?
Yeah, so we actually have a really good diverse group of projects that were funded in round one, which were, so for the AI side of things, so the other thing I guess to outline is when you apply, you self-identify as whether or not you're applying for AI or emerging technologies. It doesn't really matter to us which one you apply for. We can move you across if we think you're more amenable to one than the other. It's more just about which pot of money we're paying you from, if that makes sense. But for AI, we had AI in mental health, which is all working with it's Monash and Melbourne University, and it's working with the Monash Health and a few other of the medical institutions to look at how to what are they doing? I'm just looking at it now. Decision support tools in hospitals and things like that for mental health. Another one which is actually being led kind of mostly out of Data 61 and CSIRO is the off-ramps project, which is looking at social disadvantage and using new data science methodologies and AI to identify how to make sure kids finish school well. So looking at that transition from in high school and why students don't finish, and that's funded by the Paul Ramsay Foundation philanthropic organisation, and it's working with the New South Wales Department of Education and Western Sydney Uni and UTS and ANU. And then we have a complete turn onto AI-enabled advanced materials technology, which is from Deakin, ANU and UNSW, BlueScope, Advanced Ally Holdings, NanoCube, Maple Glass Printing, Duratech. Towards AI on the edge, developing data-efficient machine learning models for multimodal sensing devices and AI IoT. All systems analysis, analytics, and intelligent automation. Some of them are really a mouthful to say. So those are our AI related ones. And then for emerging tech, we have, again, a really good diversity. We've got some things around the metaverse, quite a bit about IoT and cybersecurity, digital engineering for device on demand. So a bit of things on sensing and things as well. We've got a whole range of, we've got a whole program looking at quantum technologies that's being run out of Sydney Quantum Academy with obviously the universities that are involved with SQA, and they've got KPMG, BTQ and Quintessence Labs. Artificial intelligence of things for resilient and sustainable smart cities with Blue IoT. So they're all listed on the website. You can have a look at, who's involved in them to sort of get a better idea. It's got a summary and things. So yeah, we got a really good diversity, which is really great, I think, because it means we're not going to necessarily all be competing for the same students. It would have been a bit difficult if we had, 10 projects that all looked the same, because then they would all just be after the same students. So yeah, that's the main thing. And yeah, we're looking for really good multidisciplinary projects as well. It's great. It would be great to see things that kind of go outside of just sort of engineering and IT.
Jess, who owns the IP from any research that's done?
The people involved need to determine that on a project agreement that sits underneath the project.
Okay.
We don't touch that. The student needs to own the copyright to their thesis as per any normal, student program. But yes, we would expect that the IP is managed by the leaders of the projects.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're not touching that. I didn't even want to get involved in those discussions. I'm like, that can be parked and you guys can organize that, because there's
always
12.
Too
Sorry.
hard. It's always too hard. So
Yeah, well, we have, we've got 12 successful programs with 66 partners, 66 industry and 14 universities. There's no way I'd be able to manage IP discussions across that many people. That would be my full-time job. So no, we've put that down onto, and we don't have the relationships, and we don't actually have the oversight of the projects. We're acting much more of a convener for the students and a funding body. So there's no involvement on CSIRO in the actual projects, unless a CSIRO supervisor is actively involved, in which case they would be part of that discussion and that project agreement. CSIRO across the board is not involved in the project, so we shouldn't really even be involved in those discussions.
Thank you.
Yeah, as a former PhD student, I think universities generally have a strong hand in the IP of projects, but I think there is some grounds to negotiate that from previous experience. Generally, it's negotiable.
Yeah, I came from an ITTC, like an Industrial Transformation Training Centre, and we had a similar plan we had industry partners involved, and we had students involved and things like that. And our general thoughts were that as the students should always own their copyright to their thesis and things, and no one should preclude them from being able to publish or, being able to get their degree. The background IP should be owned obviously by the person who brings it or the entity that brings it. And then the IP discussions about what's developed should be ongoing, and it should be documented in a live document that is a continuous discussion as things evolve. And then I guess the other thing is generally we had, that the parties would have free license to use it. So someone would own it, but then if everyone's creating it or having a part of it, that the parties have license to use that for a period of time or for particular purposes or something. But it's every one of these programs is so different that it's impossible to put any kind of one provision in place, because they're all going to be very different. The Off-Ramps project is funded by a philanthropic organisation. They don't care about IP. Then the Department of Education obviously cares about IP, and that they own all the data and the databases for the students that we're using the analysis for. But they're not actually, and they'll be co-creating some of the IP in terms of the models that are created, but they're not. Yeah, so I think it has to just be entirely dependent on the project.
IP. But it's exciting that there is a strategy and a plan, and and I think often I know that you talked a little bit about the program and the industry involvement and the potential that the industry partner may have to maybe even hire the student. And
yes.
Yeah, did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so from our perspective, obviously there's 480 scholarships. I think we're expecting around 300 of them to be PhD students. That may change. We obviously may adapt that based on the number of students we're getting through. It may end up being a little bit more heavy towards the other types of students based on what the needs of industry are, because I think the shortage of skilled workers is not a shortage of skilled workers that necessarily need PhDs. There's a lot to be gained from just people who understand the needs of industry and the needs of and what research looks like without necessarily going through the full PhD. But having said that, there's also not a huge amount of postdoc roles in Australia. So from our perspective, if the student finishes any of the programs, whether that be honours, masters or PhD, and gets poached by the partner at the end of it, that's a win to us. We're not expecting these students or anticipating that all of these students go through and become academics. We're actually very hopeful that the partners see this as a way of doing a sort of test run with the students and then stealing them at the end. For us, that seems like a really great and a really great outcome. And when I worked on the ITTC, we had a partner that was McKinsey, and they essentially the whole way through just said that they were working with us on this to steal our students at the end. And we were like, that's fine, but they still have to graduate because we don't hit our metrics if they don't graduate.
And I think it's kind of like an exciting way to have your own innovation department. Like I was talking to an industry partner yesterday, said they hired a data scientist, but they felt a bit isolated because they were the only people in the organization, and they were doing everything. And so it's kind of a way of being able to build that capability in your organization as well. So super exciting. But I think we're at time. If there's no more questions, I'm going to give Jess some time back. Thank you very much, Dave, for your email. I'll be getting in touch with you. If anybody else would like to have a chat further about our themes, PJ will probably get in touch with you as well. And we very much look forward to working with you and putting together a fantastic submission for Jess, hopefully by August. And we'll be communicating with you with all the requirements. So it seems like quite a, not a really big amount of work that is required for the industry partner in terms of the letter of the non-binding letter of support. So we look forward to helping you through that. Did you want to add in?
Yeah, there's some information in the chat. So if people are interested, yeah.
So
yeah,
there's
some of my team was on the
in
the chat. So thanks, Janice.
Yeah.
And if you have any more questions for me, you're more than welcome to reach out as well. So the the team that I manage and my role in this is we don't assess any of the applications. So we can help put things together if need be. We can help give advice. We can do all of those sorts of things. Our team is here as a facilitator. And we do have this application process, and we obviously have to do a review process and things like that to meet the requirements of what we're providing when we're giving Commonwealth funding. But we're not actively trying to stop people from getting funding. Ideally, we want to just fund everything if we can. So any help you need, feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to help out wherever anyone needs it.
Thank you so much for your generosity today, Jess. We really appreciate it. And I think, everyone else got into it. And thanks for all your questions, everyone. And we look forward to working with you, and enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
See you later.